Hi, my name's Marla. At a fancy dinner meant to celebrate my sister, she raised her glass, looked me straight in the eye, and said, "Sweetheart, find another table. This one's for family, not for adopted kids." And everyone laughed. They didn't know I'd spent my whole life trying to belong in a house that only needed me quiet, obedient, invisible. But that night, when the $5,700 bill hit the table, and I pulled out my card just to keep some dignity, a voice cut through the air like a knife. "Stop right there." It was my fiancé, and when they turned around and saw who he really was, their smiles disappeared. But the real twist? They weren't afraid because he loved me. They were afraid because he knew exactly what they'd done. So tell me, what would you do if the only family you ever had was built on a lie? Before we dive in, tell us, where are you listening from? And what time is it right now? Drop a comment, because this story, it's not just mine, it might be yours too. Friday evenings in downtown Chicago always carried a pulse. Soft jazz slipping out of wine bars, the shuffle of designer shoes on cobblestone, laughter echoing through crisp autumn air. The restaurant glowed like a jewel box, tucked between a florist and a boutique, its velvet curtains pulled wide as if welcoming only the polished and proud. I adjusted the strap of my purse, caught my reflection in the brass handle, and sighed. Hair, smooth. Lipstick, holding. Posture, perfect. And yet, I still felt like a visitor in my own skin, rehearsing niceties like a stagehand hoping for a line. Vivian's birthday, again. Another chance to sit in polished silence, to smile when mocked, to answer questions that aren't really questions. "Still working marketing?" they'd ask with that upward lilt that made the job sound like a phase, like babysitting or selling bracelets in college. I stepped inside, warmth hit first, garlic and sage, wine, money. Then came the hostess, recognizing the name Shaw like it was gold. I was early. Of course I was. My fiancé, Raphael, was running late from a client meeting. I didn't mind. It gave me time to settle, to brace. If I stay quiet and smile, I told myself, maybe this time they won't treat me like a guest in my own family. They arrived like clockwork. First Vivian, floating in silk and expectation, kissed both my cheeks but looked over my shoulder. "Marla, you actually made it on time. Impressive." Then came my parents. Dad nodded like I was a colleague. Mom scanned me like she was still trying to figure out what about me didn't match the rest. We were seated, round table, perfect lighting. Waiters hovered. Everyone got a menu, except me. "Excuse me," I said softly. "Could I get a—" "Oh, we only print 8. Just share with me," Vivian cut in, already sipping her wine. She didn't even look at me. The first barb came while I buttered bread. "Still doing those digital ads?" Dad asked. "Marketing consulting," I said, smiling. Vivian tilted her glass. "You owe your whole career to that internship I got you, right? Imagine where you'd be without me." I laughed. I always did. It bought me time, hid my pulse. They kept going. "You never used to eat bread," Mom noted, watching my hand. "Is that still a thing?" My chest tightened. I nodded, pretending I didn't hear. CM. Slow simmer, building pressure. Dinner came, voices rose, laughter bounced off the chandelier. Until Vivian tilted her head and said, loudly enough to quiet the music, "Sweetheart, find another table. This one's for family, not for adopted kids." Silence. Not a pin drop kind, a fork clatter kind, a "did she just say that" kind. My throat closed, but I didn't cry, I didn't flinch. I stood, reached for my purse. That silence? It split the room clean. A waiter hovered awkwardly. "Miss, you can sit over here if you'd like." He pointed toward a corner table near the restroom. He handed me a napkin, clean, folded, soft. I sat alone, napkin clenched in my hand like it meant something. Maybe it did. Maybe kindness isn't big. Maybe it's just not cruelty. I could hear them laughing again. A few phones lit up. I knew someone was filming. I sipped my water, each drop a weight. I focused on breathing, in, out, smile. You're not broken. Then came the check. The waiter returned to their table, flustered. He held a single bill, blinking. Apologies, it's all on one tab. Vivian grinned. Perfect. Marla always wanted to chip in, right? I watched her. Then I smiled, small, knowing. I pulled my card from my wallet and offered it. But before it touched the reader, a voice rang out. Stop right there. All heads turned. Raphael stood at the entrance. Tailored suit, calm fury in his eyes. Every shaw froze. He walked toward me, slow, deliberate, reached my side, placed a hand on my shoulder, looked straight at the waiter. She doesn't pay for cruelty. The room went still. The waiter looked between us. My sister's smile faltered. I looked up at him, whispered, You shouldn't have come. He had been watching all along, and what he revealed next would shatter everything I thought I knew about my family. Raphael's steps were measured, deliberate, like he was giving them one last chance to check their conscience before he said anything. I stayed seated, still holding the napkin in my lap like it could shield me. The clinking of glasses faded. Forks settled on plates. You could feel the energy shift, like someone had opened a window in winter and all the warmth was gone. Vivian, for the first time that night, hesitated. Her smile wobbled, lips twitching between smug and startled. Raphael, I didn't know you'd be joining us, she said, voice trying to wrap itself in charm, but it cracked at the edges. I wasn't invited, he said simply. He didn't look at her. His eyes moved from my untouched plate to their half-finished entrees. And then he turned toward me, not questioning, not doubting, just there. I realized in that moment that he hadn't just arrived. He had been there the whole time, at the bar near the back. I hadn't noticed, too caught in the swirl of performance and pain. But he had seen it all. He glanced once toward the bartender, who gave a subtle nod, confirmation maybe. Then Raphael's voice came low and calm. You know, I've seen a lot of ugly things in my life, but watching a family laugh at one of their own, that's a different kind of crime. No one moved. My mother looked down at her lap, then reached for her water as if thirsty for anything else. My father cleared his throat, tried to sit straighter, like posture could wash off shame. Vivian adjusted her napkin and smiled like she was preparing for a photo. Oh, come on, we were just teasing, she said, brushing imaginary lint off her dress. Marla knows how we are, right, sis? The way she said it, like I was still 8 and too grateful to question their cruelty, made something in me snap. I didn't speak. Raphael did. He turned toward the waiter and said with calm finality, Separate the checks. She's not paying for them. The room dropped into a hush, broken only by the scribble of the waiter's pen. Vivian narrowed her eyes, leaned toward me, and whispered just loud enough, Does he speak for you now? Or do you still need a man to fix your messes? I looked her squarely in the face. No, he doesn't speak for me, I said, letting each word stand alone. But he's not wrong either. I meant it, not just about the check, about everything. I had let them carve pieces out of me for so long, my silence, my loyalty, my money, and tell me it was love. Raphael reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded napkin. He laid it gently on the table in front of Vivian. Everyone stared. I believe this belongs to you, he said. She looked confused, then unfolded it. Inside was a printed receipt. I recognized it instantly, from a gala 2 years ago. One I didn't even attend. A $12,000 donation to some charity Vivian adored, charged to my card. She'd claimed it was a billing mistake, said she'd pay me back. She never did. Raphael's voice was even, but sharp enough to cut glass. Funny, mistakes seem to happen every time you're around her. My father blinked. My mother shifted in her seat, eyes darting between us like she was suddenly seeing a movie she hadn't paid for. Vivian didn't flinch. She laughed, not loud, not amused, just tired, mean. "You really think money makes you better than us?" she said, rising just a bit in her seat. "She should be grateful we took her in." That did it. I stood, not in a rage, just done. I said. I was grateful, until I realized you only loved the part of me that paid your bills. Nobody replied. The weight of that silence was the most honest thing that ever passed between us. Raphael extended his hand. I took it, fingers trembling but firm. We turned to leave. But before the door swung shut behind us, I looked back. Vivian sat frozen, wineglass in hand, reflection warped by the curve of the glass. She didn't look powerful anymore, just small. Outside, the air had cooled. Raphael led us a few steps down the sidewalk, then stopped. "Stop right there," he said gently, turning to me. "You don't owe them an explanation." I stared at the night sky, blinking back the sting. "I know," I whispered, "but one day they'll owe me the truth." That night, I barely slept. Raphael stayed on the couch, pretending to watch TV, but I knew he was just giving me space. I laid in bed, eyes open, heart steady. No crying, no anger, just a strange quiet inside. It felt like waiting for a storm that already passed, but left your house standing with the roof slightly crooked. The next morning, I shuffled into the kitchen. The sun broke through the blinds in long golden strips, catching the steam rising from my coffee mug. I stood there, holding it like something sacred, staring at the fridge magnets and photos like they belonged to someone else's life. A knock came at the door, 2 short raps, then silence. I wasn't expecting anyone. I opened it to find a young man in a courier jacket, polite smile, no words, just an envelope. "For Miss Shaw," he said. I hesitated, then took it. Back inside, I turned it over in my hands. Cream-colored, thick, sealed with my family's crest, those 2 intertwined lions my father was so proud of. But the name on the front wasn't mine, Vivian Shaw. I froze. I thought maybe it was a mailing mix-up. Maybe Vivian had used my address for something. But Dad's handwriting was unmistakable. Sharp, slanted, exact like the man himself. I stared at it for a long time. My first instinct was to call her, return it, do the right thing. But then I remembered her face last night, the smirk, the casual cruelty. I set my coffee down and sat at the table, the envelope in front of me like a dare. My fingers trembled as I broke the seal. Inside was a single document, neatly folded. I opened it slowly, and the words hit harder than I expected. Revision of Family Trust Allocation. It was a legal transfer. The trust fund that had been promised to me years ago, the one my father said would secure my future, was reassigned. To Vivian. Effective 6 months ago, 6 months ago. I was in the hospital, a car accident. A driver had run a red light, T-boned me on a rainy afternoon. I'd spent weeks recovering. There were forms to sign, discharge papers, financial releases. I thought they were routine. A particular line on the document twisted my stomach. To ensure the family's legacy remains with blood heirs. I read it over and over, like repetition could make it sting less. But it didn't. I couldn't breathe for a moment. Not because of rage, not even pain. Just a sinking realization. They hadn't just taken the money. They had taken me out of the family on paper and made me sign it myself. I leaned back, pressing my palms into the edge of the table. The wood bit into my skin, grounding me. And then the memory came rushing in. Vivian at my bedside, brushing my hair behind my ear like a mother would. "Don't worry about all this," she said sweetly. "Just sign where the doctor marked it. We'll take care of everything." That paper wasn't medical. It was the trust transfer. "She made me erase myself," I whispered, the words catching like gravel in my throat. I stood, unable to sit still. Walked to the window, then the hallway, then back to the kitchen. Everything in my apartment suddenly felt like a museum exhibit of a life I was only pretending to live. Raphael arrived without knocking. He had a key. He paused when he saw me standing there, envelope in hand. "What is it?" he asked gently. I didn't answer, just held it out. He took it, read the document in silence. Once, then again. His expression didn't change, but I saw something flicker deep behind his eyes. "You trusted them even when they cashed your soul like a check," he finally said. I swallowed hard. I just wanted to believe I was family. Raphael set the letter on the table like it might catch fire if handled wrong. "I need you to see something," he said. He pulled out his phone, opened a file, then handed it to me. Photos, taken from a distance. Vivian outside a law office, shaking hands with a man I recognized. Dad's attorney. The timestamp? 3 days before the trust transfer was signed. My stomach twisted. "She set this up," I murmured. "Before the hospital, before the accident. She planned this." "She didn't just steal from you," Raphael said. "She erased your name from your own story." The rage came quietly, like water rising beneath a closed door. No shouting, no breaking things. Just this calm decision settling in my bones. "I'm not confronting them," I said. "Not yet." Raphael nodded. "Good. You'll need more than truth. You'll need proof." I turned back to the envelope, carefully tucking the letter back inside. That's when I saw it. A faint watermark near the bottom right corner. Initials. RM, not Vivian's, not Dad's, someone else. I traced it with my thumb. "That signature," I whispered, "will lead me straight into the kind of darkness Raphael once ruled." The rest of the night unraveled in silence. I didn't ask Raphael what he meant when he warned me about lawyers who know too much. I didn't need to. Now I felt it, how they operate like surgeons, cutting cleanly, leaving no trace. The ones who know where every body is buried because they drew the maps. By late afternoon the next day, we were at Raphael's penthouse. The sun had begun its descent over Lake Michigan, turning the skyline a pale orange. I sat at the long marble table in his study, a folder spread open in front of me. Contracts, letters, stamped receipts, all with my name, none of my consent. The windows let in light, but the room felt cold, like the air was watching me. Raphael leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "You sure you want to keep going?" I didn't answer. I reached for a notepad and kept reading. He made a call. Short, quiet, precise. Then, he turned to me. "We're meeting him tonight. Someone who used to work with Mercer. He knows the game, but he'll only talk if he feels safe." Later that evening, we arrived at a small jazz bar tucked between a bakery and a travel agency, in a part of the city people forget exists. No signage, no music playing from outside. You had to know it was there. Inside, the lights were dim, and the air smelled like aged whiskey and worn leather. No one used real names here. We sat in the far booth. A man slid into the seat across from us, mid-50s, tan coat, cautious eyes. Raphael nodded once. The man glanced at me, then looked at Raphael. "She good?" "She's the reason we're here," Raphael replied. The man, Alan, exhaled and folded his hands. "I used to run errands for your family's lawyer. Paperwork, deliveries, signatures. Stuff nobody wanted a record of. I kept my eyes steady. "Did you see the trust transfer?" He nodded slowly. "Vivian brought it in, not your father. The notary that day? Paid off. That second signature on the docs? RM. That's the notary. She made it look airtight." I tried to stay calm, but my grip on the table tightened. "She signed while I was in the hospital," I said. Alan looked at me carefully. "You were sedated. It wasn't legal, but legal and proven are two different things." Raphael's jaw tightened. "You still in touch with Mercer?" Alan shook his head. "Not directly, but I know where the files are buried." Raphael nodded once. That was enough. Back at the penthouse, we didn't talk much. I needed time to think, alone. Raphael poured himself a drink and disappeared into another room. I stayed by the table, staring at my reflection in the glass. Every memory with Vivian began to look like a setup. Birthdays where I was handed a bill, holidays where she lost my gifts. Even the night she stayed at the hospital, I thought it was kindness. It was just paperwork. I walked into the guest bathroom, splashed water on my face, then stared at myself in the mirror. I didn't look broken, just done waiting. "I kept hoping they'd treat me like family," I said aloud. "But I was never the sister. I was the product." When I stepped out, Raphael was waiting by the desk. He held out a small USB drive. "What's this?" "Everything Mercer's firm has done off the books," he said. "My guy pulled it from their internal archives. Contracts, bribes, laundering. It's all in there." I took it. No hesitation. Raphael studied me for a long moment. "This is business to me, but blood to you. Don't mix the two." I nodded. "I'm not asking you to fix it. I'm asking you to watch what I do next." His mouth twitched, almost a smile. "Just be careful what you find." At home, I waited until the apartment was still. I lit a candle, turned off the overhead light, and opened my laptop. The drive hummed softly as it loaded. Folders bloomed across the screen. Years of files, some labeled, others hidden behind coded names. I clicked one folder. Dozens of scanned documents. My signature on loans I never applied for. Property records linked to LLCs with names I didn't recognize. And then I saw it. Project Heirloom. I opened it. Inside, a full asset map. A real estate fund registered under my name, valued at over $8.3 million. Several properties, offshore accounts, all active. I blinked. Once, twice. It didn't make sense. Vivian didn't just take from me, she used me. I whispered into the silence. I wasn't erased. I was their shield. They needed someone invisible, someone who wouldn't ask questions, someone to sign the forms and disappear behind them. My hands shook as I clicked through the rest of the folder. Receipts, checks, legal memos. Everything pointed to a coordinated strategy. Use the adopted daughter as a financial front. And then, without prompting, a video began to play. Grainy surveillance footage. A meeting room. My father, Vivian, and the lawyer sitting around a polished table. My father leaned forward, speaking into a phone recorder. His voice low, measured. "She doesn't need to know. As long as she signs what we tell her, she'll stay quiet." Vivian sipped her drink and nodded. The lawyer adjusted his tie and added, "We've built everything around her name. We can't undo that now. Just keep her out of meetings." I didn't cry. I paused the video, staring at the frozen frame. My father mid-sentence, Vivian smiling at the corner of her mouth. The woman who said I owed everything to them had been living off my signature for years. I leaned back, swallowed the lump rising in my throat, and whispered to myself, "I've heard enough." The next morning, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I made coffee, dressed like it was just another Thursday, and called the lawyer's office. I booked an appointment under Vivian's name. The elevator doors opened with a chime that felt louder than it should have been. I stepped out onto the 27th floor, my heels soft against the pristine marble. The office was quiet, too quiet. The kind of hush that didn't invite peace but demanded silence. Cold air drifted from unseen vents, and every surface gleamed like it had something to hide. When the receptionist asked for my name, I would later recall, I smiled and said, Vivian Shaw. The lie slid off my tongue easier than I expected. The woman behind the desk didn't blink. She typed something, gave a nod, and said, Yes, Ms. Shaw. Mr. Langston is expecting you. Of course he was. This entire building ran on secrets and clockwork precision. I followed the assistant down a long hallway lined with framed diplomas, Langston's accomplishments stacked one after another, signed and sealed like trophies of quiet betrayals. I didn't look at them long. I didn't need to be reminded how many people trusted this man with everything they had. Inside his office, Langston stood when I entered. His suit was too perfect, hair too neat. He extended a hand, but when I didn't move to shake it, he withdrew with a polite smile that didn't reach his eyes. I sat down, crossing one leg over the other. No small talk, no pretense. He tilted his head, studying me. You're not Vivian. No, I said, cool and steady. But you already knew that. His jaw flexed. You shouldn't be here. And yet, I leaned forward. Here we are. I placed my purse on the table, the recording device already rolling inside it. You forged my name. You used me. Now I'm here to discuss your fee. Langston gave a low chuckle, masking discomfort. You've been misinformed, and you're treading into dangerous waters, Miss Shaw. I smiled faintly. Oh, I think those waters were already deep when you dipped your pen in. His smile faded. He opened a drawer and slid a folder toward me. Vivian warned me this might happen. She said you were emotional. That word hung in the air like a slap. I looked down at the folder, untouched. And you believed her? Langston shrugged, trying to stay above it all. Legally, you're adopted. That matters in probate law. You have no claim, Miss Shaw. Let's not make this ugly. My tone stayed even. It's already ugly. You just didn't expect the evidence to talk back. I opened my tablet and tapped the screen. Here's everything your office processed under my name, including Project Heirloom. A little odd for someone with no legal claim, don't you think? His face went pale. He looked at the files, then at me, then back again. Before he could speak, the phone on his desk buzzed. One ring. He answered quickly, his voice lower this time. Yes, she's here. He hung up. His fingers tightened around the edge of the desk. You should go, he said. I didn't move. Now, he added. Then I saw her reflection in the glass door behind me. Vivian. She stepped in without knocking, her heels silent on the rug, hair perfect, lips curled. You never could stay in your place, could you? She said softly. I turned in my chair to face her fully. I didn't know I had one. She laughed once, not amused, cornered, always pretending to be the good one. You should have stayed grateful. For what? I asked. For being invisible? For not being thrown away again? Her words hit like a backhand, but I didn't flinch. I reached into my purse and pulled out the recorder, pressed play. Langston's voice filled the office, calm, clinical. Vivian forged the signature while Marlo was sedated. Vivian's eyes widened, just slightly, before she lunged for the device. But I was faster. I stood, stepped back, held it out of her reach. Game over, I said. My voice didn't tremble. The office door burst open. 2 security guards rushed in, glancing between the 3 of us. One of them looked at me. I handed him the recorder. Make sure the police get a copy. Vivian turned to Langston, furious. You let her in? She used your name, he barked. What was I supposed to do? I didn't stay for the rest. Outside, the city hadn't changed. The sky was still pale blue, cars still honked, people still walked by, unaware of the war that had just taken place on the 27th floor. My phone buzzed as I reached the curb. A message from Raphael: "They're going to retaliate. Be ready." I looked up at the glass building behind me and thought, let them try. Then I turned, walked to the curb, and climbed into the rideshare I'd called 3 minutes before, handing over the recorder. No part of me flinched. I was past fear, past trying to earn a seat at their table. I wasn't knocking on doors anymore. I was prying them open. I got home before midnight. The city was unusually quiet, wrapped in the kind of fog that clings to the edges of street lamps like secrets too heavy to rise. I changed into sweats, made chamomile tea I didn't finish, and sat at the kitchen table with my laptop open but untouched. The silence in the room wasn't comforting. It felt aware, like something was waiting. By 1:00 a.m., I hadn't moved, just sat there, listening. That's when the sound started, not loud, just deliberate. Boots, wet pavement, slow, steady steps past my window. I glanced at the clock. 1:17 a.m., then I peeked through the blinds. 2 figures, tall, dark coats, no movement beyond their pacing near the gate. Not talking, not laughing, not lost. They were waiting. My phone buzzed. Raphael. "Do not open the door. I'm already on my way." I moved quickly but quietly, slipping my phone into the back pocket of my sweatpants. I grabbed a kitchen knife, my fingers wrapped around the handle, more for control than defense. Then came the thud. The back door rattled once, hard. I froze. Another hit. The lock popped, a clean snap that echoed into the hallway like a verdict. I stepped backward into the shadows, careful not to breathe too loudly. My body moved on instinct, but my mind was sharp. I knew what they wanted. The drive. I crouched beside the hallway closet, retrieved my purse, and slipped the flash drive into the lining. Then I bolted, barefoot, through the bathroom, eased the window open, and climbed out onto the fire escape. The metal was cold under my feet. Rain slick. My heartbeat wasn't racing. It was pacing, like it had done this before. Below, the alley stretched out like a trap. But I kept moving, 1 floor down, then another. A door slammed open behind me. 1 voice, then 2. "Where is it?" "She had it earlier." Another thud. Something knocked off the kitchen counter. I hit the pavement. My soles burned against the chill, but I didn't stop. A black SUV screeched to a halt at the mouth of the alley. Headlights off, but I recognized it instantly. Raphael stepped out, gun at his side, calm like it was just another night. "You weren't supposed to stay there," he said through clenched teeth, holding the car door open. I jumped in, breathing hard. "You told me not to run," I said. He gave the faintest smirk. "And look at you now." Before I could reply, the building behind us lit up. Sparks, then flame. Something had overloaded, or maybe someone had. I glanced down at the bag on my lap. 1 small item fell from the side pocket. An old napkin, folded in half, the one the waiter had given me that night at the restaurant. The one Raphael had picked up. It fluttered out the open window, carried by the wind, swallowed by darkness. Kindness always leaves quietly, I thought. We didn't speak again until the SUV pulled into a long, unmarked driveway on the edge of the city. Raphael punched in a code, and the gate slid open. The safe house looked like a converted auto shop. Metal walls, tinted windows, no sign of life. But inside, it was fully wired, stocked, secure. He handed me a towel and motioned toward the corner cot. "Sit, you're freezing." I dried my feet, but didn't lie down. Instead, I sat at the folding table while Raphael made a call in the next room. Voice low, sharp. When he returned, he tossed a thick folder onto the table. "Vivienne sent them. She's trying to scrub the mess before the cops start digging." I looked at him. She's going to pretend none of it happened. Not this time, he said. Then opened the folder. Project Heirloom. Not just the front I'd unknowingly carried, but the entire scheme. Real estate accounts, bank wires, shell companies. And at the top, my father's name. Not just listed, but leading. He had signed off on laundering money through my name for years. The room didn't spin. I didn't break down. I just nodded. So this is what family means, I murmured. Raphael sat across from me, elbows on the table. You want justice? He asked. Then you've got two options. You can take this to the police and disappear. Or you can use it. But if you do, everything changes. I stared at the pages. Numbers, names, lies. Changes for who? I asked. For all of them, he said, including me. The silence stretched, not heavy, just clear. Outside, the wind picked up. Streetlights flickered through the window slats like a silent jury. I wasn't the lost daughter anymore. I was the ledger they forged, the paper they twisted, the woman they underestimated. I traced a finger along the edge of the folder. They took my name, I said. Maybe it's time I take theirs. Raphael didn't speak, just slid his phone across the table toward me. A new message had come in. Blocked number. If she talks, she dies. He waited for my reaction. I didn't blink. I picked up the phone, handed it back, and said calmly, Then let's make sure my silence is louder than their threats. Raphael didn't answer. He didn't need to. We both knew what came next. By sunrise, the fog from the night before had turned to a bright, cold haze that hovered low over the streets. It was the kind of morning that felt like a dare. I changed into a cream blouse, black slacks, and my mother's old brooch, not because I wanted to honor her, but because I wanted her to see it and remember who she used to pretend I was. Raphael waited downstairs in the car, silent, focused. The ride to the estate took under 30 minutes, but it felt like crossing decades. The Shaw house stood just as it always had, perched on its manicured hill like it was above consequences. White stone, black shutters, two fountains that hadn't worked in years. The lawn was trimmed, the path was swept, and not a thing about it looked like it belonged to anyone who'd built their empire on betrayal. I used to walk into that house hoping someone would notice me. This time, I walked in so they'd never forget me. The doors opened with that familiar, hollow groan, a sound like memory. I didn't knock, I didn't ring. I walked straight in. They were in the drawing room. All of them. My father sitting in the same armchair he used to read the Sunday paper in. My mother beside him, sipping coffee like it was any other morning. And Vivian, draped across the chaise, with a wineglass in hand, even though it was barely past 8. Their voices dropped the second I crossed the threshold. My father looked up, color draining. My mother dropped her mug, the crash echoing through the room. Vivian didn't move right away, just blinked like I was a ghost stepping out of the past. Didn't expect to see your adopted daughter again, did you? I said evenly. No one answered. Vivian finally straightened, eyes narrowing. What are you doing here? You think you can scare us with Raphael's muscle? I stepped forward and placed a folder on the coffee table. The pages were crisp, clean, terrifying. No, I said. I came with something stronger. My father's hand trembled before he even opened the folder. The moment his eyes landed on the first page, he stiffened. You don't understand, he began. I understand perfectly, I cut in. You taught me to sign anything without reading. You taught me to stay quiet. But you forgot. Silence keeps records. I placed the USB next to the folder. My mother gasped. This drive has every transaction, every forged signature, every time you used me to cover for your lies. Vivian's laugh was bitter, mocking. You wouldn't dare. I already did. It landed like a thunderclap. My mother stood, shaky. Her voice cracked. "We did what we thought was best. You were different." I looked at her, slow and steady. "Different? You mean disposable?" I felt the words as they left my mouth, not sharp like knives, but heavy like stone. They'd been waiting for years to come out. For years, I begged to belong. I ate your food, wore your name, played your game. You built a family out of whispers and warnings. I built my strength from the silence you left me in. My mother's lips quivered, but she didn't deny it. Vivian moved suddenly, too fast to register. She crossed the room in 3 strides and slapped me across the face. The sting was sharp, but not surprising. That sound, the crack of her palm against my skin, was followed by another sound. A voice. "If you touch her again, I'll make sure your next phone call is to a lawyer, not your father." Raphael. He stood at the doorway like he'd been waiting for that exact moment. Vivian froze. I didn't flinch, didn't touch my cheek. I just turned to face my sister and said quietly, "I'm done being your mistake to hide." That was the moment everything collapsed. My father clutched his chest and slumped forward. My mother screamed his name, scrambling to catch him. Vivian darted to his side, yelling for someone to call for help. No one moved but me. I stood still, watching the house that built me start to break apart, watching the woman who claimed me with conditions cry over the man who spent years turning my life into a cover story. And I didn't feel cold. I felt done. "This house never loved me," I whispered to myself. "It just needed me to keep its lights on." I turned to Raphael. "Let's go." We walked out as the sirens blared in the distance, closer, louder, unavoidable. Red and blue lights flickered against the windows just as we stepped into the car. Raphael glanced back once. I didn't. By the time we pulled away from the estate, the sky behind us had started to blush with the first hints of dawn. The city was just waking up. I watched from the passenger seat, hands folded in my lap, the silence between us soft, not heavy, not tense, just earned. We drove through the city in silence. No sirens now, no shouting, just the sound of tires humming on pavement and the quiet pulse of what was left unsaid. Back at the penthouse, the sun had fully risen. Its light poured through the glass windows, warming the space in a way I hadn't felt in days. I wrapped both hands around my coffee cup and stood in front of the TV, watching as my family's name unraveled across every major news network. Shocking allegations against the Shaw family, fraud, embezzlement, forgery. There it was, on every screen, every ticker, every headline. The same name that once felt borrowed now belonged to me in full. And for once, it wasn't attached to shame. It was attached to truth. Raphael stood beside me, his arms crossed, face unreadable. "You won," he said quietly. I shook my head. "No one wins when blood stains the papers." He didn't argue. The footage shifted. Reporters crowded outside the gates of the estate. My father, taken out on a stretcher, my mother shielding her face. Vivian, hair pinned tight, sunglasses too big, walking stiffly toward a police car. She still thought dignity could be worn like perfume. The TV buzzed low as Raphael muted the volume and stepped into the kitchen. I sat down on the couch and stared out the window, the steam from my cup curling upward like the thoughts in my head. My phone rang. Unknown number. "Ms. Shaw?" the voice asked. "Yes." "This is Detective Collins. I just wanted to thank you again. The evidence you provided will be key in building the case. You've done a difficult thing." "Justice is supposed to be difficult," I replied. He hesitated. "There's one more thing. You'll be subpoenaed to testify. This isn't over." I didn't expect it to be. We ended the call politely, and I stared at my phone a moment longer than necessary, until Raphael came over and placed a hand gently on my shoulder. "You didn't do this for revenge," he said. "You did it because you refused to disappear." I looked up at him. His voice was low, but his words felt like wind against a locked door, shaking something loose inside me. "I wanted them to see me," I whispered. "Turns out I just needed to see myself." The rest of the morning passed slowly. I packed my things from the guest room in silence. When I pulled open the nightstand drawer, I found it. That napkin, crumpled, faded, but still here. I unfolded it carefully, flattening the creases with my palm. There, in the corner, a smudged note in Raphael's handwriting from that first dinner. "You don't owe them silence." It had felt like pity then. Now it felt like prophecy. I smiled, not a full smile, not something bright and beaming, but something real. The kind of smile that only comes after everything has fallen and you're still standing. That evening, the sky outside the windows turned amber, and Raphael finally spoke again. His voice was different, lighter, or maybe just less guarded. "I should have told you sooner," he said, sitting across from me. "I knew your sister's family long before I met you." I didn't interrupt. "They invested in my old firm before I walked away. That's why they panicked when I showed up in your life." "So, you knew who they were?" I asked. He nodded. "Yes, but I didn't know who you were. Not until I saw you stand up to them." I stared at him, studying his face. Honest, worn, maybe even a little afraid. "That makes two of us," I said. He didn't smile, but he didn't look away either. Weeks passed. Testifying in court wasn't easy. The lights were hot. The room was too quiet. Vivian sat to my left, stone-faced, her mouth drawn tight, like she was still trying to control the story. My mother was behind her, wiping tears she didn't shed when I needed them most. I answered every question calmly, clearly. I didn't flinch, because I wasn't the scared girl anymore. I wasn't the forgotten daughter. I was the woman they made, and the one they underestimated. Afterward, when the reporters surrounded me, microphones thrust forward like weapons. I didn't panic. One of them yelled, "Ms. Shaw, do you have anything to say to your family?" I paused, looked directly at the camera, and said simply, "I'm not here to destroy a family. I'm here to remind one what it costs to forget love." And I walked away. That night, Raphael and I left the city. We didn't say much. We didn't have to. The silence was comfortable this time, earned, not forced. As we crossed the bridge out of Chicago, I glanced in the rearview mirror. The skyline glittered behind us, cold, beautiful, just like the world I used to chase approval from. "I used to think silence kept me safe," I said quietly. "Now I know, it only kept me small." Raphael looked over. "And now?" "Now," I said, "silence belongs to them." The words hung in the air as the road stretched out ahead of us, long and quiet. We didn't speak for the rest of the drive. We didn't need to. Something had ended, and something else, quieter, more honest, had just begun. 3 weeks passed like mist. No headlines, no threats, no screaming matches behind closed doors, just stillness. My days found rhythm again. I started teaching part-time at the community college, intro to design, nothing flashy. I volunteered twice a week at the shelter downtown. Raphael was in and out, work taking him to places I didn't ask about. But he always called at night. We'd talk about ordinary things, weather, dinner, dumb commercials, and that was enough. That morning, I was halfway through my second cup of coffee when it came. A knock. Soft, measured, hesitant. I set my mug down, heart skipping once before settling. I moved toward the door, brushing invisible lint off my shirt like it mattered. When I opened it, my breath caught. There she was, my mother. No pearls, no red lipstick, no composed facade, just a worn gray coat, hair pulled back, and a paper envelope clutched in both hands. "Hi," I said, voice steady. She didn't smile, but her eyes welled instantly. "I don't expect anything," she whispered. I needed to bring you this." She handed me the envelope like it weighed more than it should. I opened it slowly, fingers trembling just enough to betray me. Inside, a photograph. Me. Small, wide-eyed, standing in front of the Shaw mansion. My father beside me, one hand on my shoulder, the other holding a pen. On the back, in his handwriting, "For the daughter who gave us a second chance." I pressed my lips together and closed my eyes. Not to cry, just to let the moment settle. "Come sit," I said. We moved to the porch. The birds were louder than our voices at first. We sat in the same chairs Raphael and I drank wine in on weekends. But this time, everything felt different. Like I was watching someone else's memory from the outside. "He was proud of you," she said finally. "He just didn't know how to show it." I stared ahead. "You both had a funny way of showing things." She didn't argue. "I spent so many years blaming you," I continued. "But maybe we were all just locked inside what he built." She gave the tiniest nod. "You deserved better." "I know. That's why I gave it to myself." We sat there for a while, two women who had hurt each other in ways neither fully understood. But today, we weren't throwing blame. We weren't pretending it never happened. We were just sitting with it. A breeze picked up, rustling the paper napkins on the patio table. One blew off the edge and landed between us. She reached for it out of habit, smoothing the creases. I glanced down and froze. It was that napkin, the one Raphael scribbled on all those weeks ago. "You don't owe them silence," it still read, faded and slightly smudged, but legible. Her fingers paused on the ink. "This fell from my purse the night we had that dinner," I said. She held it like a confession. "You never did owe us silence." Her voice cracked on the last word. And for once, I didn't try to fix it. That silence between us, it wasn't cold anymore. It was full, whole. Eventually, she stood. "I should go." I walked her down the driveway, gravel crunching beneath our feet. She paused by the car door. "Your father," she started, then cleared her throat. "He wanted to name you Evelyn, after his mother. He said you had her strength." I gave her a small smile. "I think I finally understand what he meant." She nodded and got in the car. Didn't linger, didn't beg for more than I was ready to give. As she pulled away, I stood there, barefoot, arms crossed, wind catching my sweater. The porch light clicked on behind me. "You okay?" Raphael's voice drifted from the doorway. I turned and nodded. "For the first time," I said. "I think I am." That night, I opened my journal, something I hadn't touched since the trial, and started to write. Family isn't blood. It's the people who see you when everyone else looks away. I tucked the napkin inside the pages, between memories I'd rewritten in my own hand. A candle flickered beside me. Nothing fancy, just enough light to see the words. And for the first time, silence didn't feel like a cage. It felt like home.